Well, this is a really important question. There's no definitive answer. I would hate to be in a position to mandate what every American kid should study in school. I think that would be a dangerous power to create. I think it's in the nature of the American system, of its federal structure, that there will be variance. People will study different history in California as compared with, say, Arkansas. I'm okay with that. But I do think that the government at the state level, if not at the national level, should make sure that people going through high school get US history. They have to understand the history of their own country, but they also need some world history so that they can understand that American history in a global context. What I think young people need is the big picture, and then they need to be able to zoom in on certain key episodes, because it's until you get into the detail, it's a little hard to understand the historical process, how stuff works, how events happen. And I think it's easy to be slightly blinded by the big picture. It's just too much. I remember my son Thomas, who's now 12, playing me a wonderful video of the entire history of humanity distilled into, I think, about 10 minutes. It was kind of fun, but also made you realize that an awful lot of history is just empires that you kind of vaguely heard of, rising, having a brief zenith and falling. There are lots of them. Most history is actually the history of lots and lots and lots of empires, all kind of samey. And so if one were to teach a course like that, the history of everything, I think it would be overwhelming. So the big picture, but then zoom in on the key moments. Let's take the history of the United States, which is core to what this country needs to teach its kids. I think you have to begin with the founding. You have to begin with the origins of the United States, and you have to explain what's new about it. This is the key point that is often lost sight of in our politicized times. The least interesting and original thing about the United States was that some of the colonies that revolted had slavery. Slavery was almost everywhere, and most empires had it throughout history. It would have been kind of amazing if there had been no slavery in those colonies, since it was just about everywhere else. But that's not the important thing about the United States. The important thing is that they created a political system that emerged from the Declaration of Independence and took final form in the Constitution that was new, that was unique, and solved the problem that had bedeviled history for centuries of how do you make a republic last? Most republics in the ancient world, the medieval world, and the early modern world had been very short-lived. And why was that? Well, the founding fathers thought a lot about that and came to the conclusion that you had to design a system that wouldn't allow there to be a transition to tyranny. And that easily happened historically when ordinary people became disillusioned with the institutions of the republic. A demagogue came along and said, this is all corrupt, give all the power to me, I'll sort it all out. That's how most republics ended. And so the founding fathers had this brilliant idea based on ideas of the Enlightenment. Let's make sure that the president has a little bit, but not all the power. Congress has some of the power. And there's also a Supreme Court that has some of the power. 3 separate branches of government sharing power with checks and balances. That's what's amazing about American history, about the founding, that they come up with a new way of running a republic that nobody had ever come up with before, and it works. That's one of the things you would want to start with. And then you would also have to ask the question, how did it survive the Civil War? How did this system overcome its greatest challenge, which was a war between the states about whether slavery was legitimate or not? Once you've done those 2 things and explained Washington, explained Lincoln to kids, if that's all they ever know, that's probably enough.
Because they understand it's worth defending. They understand how important it is as a basis for what America is about.
They understand what's unique about it, and they understand that it's precarious because it nearly came apart. There's a parallel world in which Britain intervenes in the Civil War on the side of the Confederacy. And there were people who argued that Britain should do that. There were people who argued that the legitimacy of the Confederacy was like the legitimacy of what became a united Italy. So in the parallel world, and we always need to keep thinking about those other worlds that didn't happen, the Confederacy wins enough to still exist. The United States falls into 2 parts, And there is never, therefore, the superpower that emerges in the aftermath of the Civil War. So you're teaching people what's unique about the United States, but you also teach them that it's precarious, that it's not guaranteed to last forever, and you may have to fight for it. That's important too.